Welcome to the Apartment Operators Podcast, where you can learn from experienced operators what it really means to be an apartment operator. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just the raw, unfiltered truth of the ups and downs of operating multifamily communities.
Welcome, everybody, to the Apartment Operator Podcast. Today we have another wonderful guest. Feras Moussa is with us. Feras is the partner of Ben Settle that was a guest on our podcast about a year ago. And would love to hear how you guys are doing today and what's been going on in the last year. But before that, give our audience just a quick few minutes about who you are, what you're doing, how your portfolio looks like today, so they'll have a background.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Joseph. Definitely appreciate it. Glad to be here. For those that don't know me, my background's actually software. I've been doing software all my life ever since high school. I had my own little web company, and then college happened. Then I worked at Microsoft and left Microsoft, had a software company, and now I do real estate. I tell people, I was looking to invest my own money, right? And learned a lot more about real estate and learned about syndication and loved it because it's people's numbers and systems. And so that's where kind of fast forward a little bit, right? Started Disrupt Equity. Clearly the name Disrupt is kind of a tech spin, right? That's kind of where that originated from. And, I left Microsoft with a vision of building software in industries that don't have it, right? Like real estate. And I've since learned the opportunity is more about tying everything that is the norm in tech and applying it to industries like real estate. And so that's a big part of what we do and how we've done it, right, at Disrupt Equity, in terms of just leveraging most of the stuff that's out there, but tie it in a way to really make a compelling package. And so today, Disrupt Equity, we've done many deals full cycle. We currently have about 1,500 units that we own and manage, right, throughout Texas and Atlanta. And then we also have Disrupt Management that does third-party management, and that's about 2,500 units as well. So that's maybe
awesome.
the very short, quick 2-minute bio. So happy to kind of drill in anything.
Awesome. Perfect. So I heard you say you have your own management company. And I heard you say you have 2,500 units under management versus 1,500 that you guys currently control, which means you're doing third party for other people. So we're definitely going to bite into that one in a few minutes. But let's get started with, have you always had your own third party management company?
No, we honestly started ours out of necessity, right? Like I said, we're in Texas and Atlanta, and we've had throughout our history 5 different management companies. So we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. And ultimately, to me, management is a very dated business, right? There's not a lot of, companies that have really thought through management and modernizing it. And so for us, we started management out of necessity just from the pure neglect that we saw happen on our own properties, right? Just clear negligence. And so that's kind of really and it's something that we knew we would need at some point, right? You'll outgrow third-party management if you're not happy with it. And so, that kind of accelerated things and really just brought on our own management, right? So we met someone that had our own management company. Joseph, you'll know as well as I do, management's a hard business, right? Let alone a bad business, but we'll get to that, right? But it's a hard business in the sense there's so much going on. And, it's hard to just, if you're a syndicator or an operator, it's not trivial to go start your own management company. I'll be honest, right? And so for us, we had someone that had her own management company, took it from 0 to 10,000 units before, right? So it's not her first rodeo. And so really that's kind of the brains behind it. And we just jet fuel it and really build up a lot more of the systems and processes. So yeah, we started ours out of necessity right before COVID hit back in January. So that was kind of maybe the right time, because honestly, sometimes I cringe thinking, what would have happened if we were still into third party management, right? So
it's amazing how our stories are similar. We took over management February 1st of 2020, and then COVID happened. And then for the first few months, you look around and you think to yourself, that's just the worst possible timing to choose to take over management. That was the worst decision. It's the worst timing. And then you look back at it and you say, it's the best thing that could have happened, because with the third party, there is no way we would have survived.
No, they just wouldn't have cared for things, right? Like there's no thinking outside the box. And, some of these companies are borderline criminal too, right? So, they would bleed you to death. It's easy. And I tell people, and I see this because whenever now that we third-party manage is really interesting, because we take over from other management companies, and you see the same pattern where the owner puts pressure on the management company, the management company reacts and does a heads in bed, gets temps, gets whatever, right? And really jacks up between temps and locators, spends $100,000, gets the property occupied. Most people can pay for a month or two. It's hard to find people that'll pay for 12 months. And, you just see that. And so then you just see this pattern where like you can literally see it in the financials, right? And then in the delinquency and in the AP. And then, a few months later, they're pissed. Everybody's pissed. That's whenever they bring us in, and then we're having to mop up, right? And that's what we saw on our property. That's what we're seeing on other people's properties. And this is where you kind of, as a property management company, you have to give the owners cold hard truth. Like literally, you have to kind of give them the information they don't want to know sometimes, or who want to hear, right? They need to know, but don't want to hear it. And really just talking to them about the fact that, hey, here's the right way to do it. It's going to take time. It's not a quick situation, right? And here's the data that shows it. So,
yeah, well, it's hard to realize that when you're on the outside, but when you have 100 or 200 unit property, it can spin out of control and drop 20-30% occupancy in no time, in a matter of months. But it can take over a year or sometimes years to recover from that 3-4 months of spiral.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see that from the outside.
Oh, it's so true. And then I'll give you a real case study, right? A deal that we third-party managed, took over a portfolio for this client. And, on one of the deals, they closed on it in the spring, right? 4 months later, we took over. And I ran the numbers for them. I'm like, so here's the numbers, and I ran these numbers 4 months after takeover. So about 8 months after they closed on it. And I'm like, the previous management company moved in 54 people. Of the 54 people, 23 of them are, large, have been evicted or skipped. The other 23 of them are large balance delinquent. So 80% of it is garbage. And I candidly say, look, our occupancy is not as high as it was before because we're having to cycle all that people, but we're collecting more money, right? So the numbers speak for themselves, and just explain, hey, it's not trivial to replace 54 people on top of renewals, on top of leasing. So it's a whole system, and it takes, to your point, it's easy to destroy a property in 2-3 months. It really is. And also destroy it in a way that as an owner, right? Like I felt like we did a good job in asset management. We were all over things. And what I realized in hindsight is most management companies don't even track what they're spending. And you don't realize it until 2 months later, right? Whereas for us, I'm anal about the team creating POs, creating invoices, and we know beforehand, right? And even on that same deal, there was about $200,000 of new AP that came in after we took over. That was never on any books. And so as an owner, you think, hey, they're doing an okay job. They're not spending that much money. But then as kind of the dust settles, you see all these problems. And so.
Yeah. And again, when it's not their money, then the spend is loose. Right. Well, the maintenance guy said we need a hose. This is a true case, right? The maintenance guy said we need a new hose, so we're gonna go buy a new hose. Oh, but we just bought one last week. What happened to it? Well, the other maintenance guys have it, and I don't know where they are. So I'm gonna get a new hose. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But that's when it's not your money and it's not, nobody cares. Then yeah,
go that on a $2,000 jetting machine. So yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So I have stories like that as well. But what I like hearing from you, and this is really kind of echoes with our experience, is the care. Now, what I found is that the industry compensation model for property management is just wrong. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't have the solution, right? Because I've been trying to rack my brain around what's the right way to do it, and I don't have a solution. If I had a solution, I would be a billionaire, I'm guessing, right? But the challenge is that they get paid off the top, and they get paid a very small percentage. But as an owner, the interests are not there. So, for example, we had a property where, long story short, $25,000 a year were not billed or collected. Well, of course, if it's not billed, you can't collect, right? For us, $25,000 a year at a 6 cap is about $500,000 worth of value to the property. So the ownership look at this as like, oh my God, it's $25,000 a year. It's a lot of money. For the management company, $25,000 a year at 4% is $1,000. It's $800. It's $80 a month. 3 hours of work for one employee. So in order to get that $25,000 a year requires more than 3 hours worth of work for an employee, it's not worth their time.
No, I agree with you. This is the problem. Okay, so I still struggle with this because, for us, we're super transparent on our fee structure. That's by design, right? Like I'm an owner and it's got the Disrupt name to it. So I really care a lot about the brand and everything else. And what I've seen is that the industry sucks because the margins are razor thin. And therefore, most management companies will pack anything and everything that's pretty questionable into the financials, right? Because again, 300,000 comes in, 200,000 goes out. It's right. And, they're really making their revenue on other things other than the management fee. And whenever you're very transparent and your revenue really is the management fee, it's sometimes a hard to explain to owners like, look, yeah, we're maybe a quarter of a point higher, but really like that is all we're taking. Like we're not, taking all these other points that these companies make up a marketing fee and this fee and not doing anything for it. Right. So
Yep.
it's a weird business in the sense that I'm surprised the margins are as tight as they are, because it really, the margins are razor thin for a business that is, really so complicated. Honestly, it's complicated, but there's just so many things that have to happen. So
Yeah, but it's the margins are where they cut the corners. Unfortunately, that's the problem. Instead of having a qualified accountant doing the work, they have somebody that is not certified, that does not have accounting education, and a lot of the time they mess things up, right? So one of the things that one of the property management companies we fired before we took over, I used to say they're playing pay lease roulette. It's like every month they spin the wheel to figure out where they're going to put the pay lease fees under which ledger account. And you would find them randomly across all the ledger accounts. So it's kind of like, that's the kind of things where they cut corner to make a little bit more money. And like I said, I think the compensation model should be different. I wish I had the formula for how different.
there's not a clear way to do it, right? Yeah, it's tough because even on, like, okay, everyone says the golden thing is NOI, but it's also easy just to say everything is capitalized and now you've kind of fudged with that. Or, you're doing a property that needs 10 times more focus because it's a big turnaround, right? Well, that also can't be NOI driven, right? It's not fair to the management company. So,
And if you're also focusing on NOI, nobody would ever take over a distressed property.
that's exactly it. That's what I mean. Those things need so much work, right? So,
Yeah.
and
The
and
NOI is
unfortunately,
negative or zero. It's like, you're not going to take it over because you're not going to make any
and
money.
then that's where even like, as a management company, there's a big difference between getting a property brand new that just got acquired and having a clean slate versus taking over from an previous management company, right? The client's already been, as the Jackie, the president of our management company, like say, they've already been burned by their girlfriend. So now, you're the next one up and they're already antsy and they're, questioning everything. And just, you start off with an uphill battle of everything. They're probably in a payable situation. They're probably cash neglected. They probably, are going to have, just delinquency problems and turning units and getting, just cycling tenant base. Plus, they've already lost trust and confidence in management. So you have to regain that. So, it's like, to me, those are very different situations and it's really hard to jump into one, whereas the other one's a lot more straightforward. So yeah, it's a weird business. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Awesome. So, so I get to ask you questions that I don't usually get to ask most of our guests because they don't have their own management company. It's usually, we found that once our guests have crossed 1,000 or 1,500 units threshold, that's where they start to think or implement their own property management company. But you have that perspective, so it's awesome. So we can start talking about that. So we had a similar situation to what you described earlier. We had a property that in a certain period of time, I don't remember, 4 or 5 months, we moved in 58 people, we moved out 55 people, right? At an average of about, let's say, $2,000 a turn, if you include payroll and everything into it, that's $100,000 invested for a net positive 3.
Yeah.
Right. That's a lot of churning. That's a lot of trying to, you have that nice ocean background.
I'm scared to go. Yeah. And I'm scared to go do that same number on deals that we had before we took over management too, because I'd probably cry a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you look at this thing and you say, what are we doing? Right. We spent $100,000 for net positive 3. That doesn't work. And that usually happens because everybody's looking at the front door and what comes in and traffic and leasing, but nobody watches the back door, right? So there's a little bit on the front door, making sure that you screen a little bit better and you qualify a little bit better. But there's a lot on the back door, right?
It's a lot. That person that made it to that, And that person that made it to that back door has already proven themselves, right? They've already been there for 12 months, right?
Yep.
No, I think a lot of these companies are very reactive about just renewals, man. I'm pretty particular about renewals, and we track that in our weekly report and just front and center. Because to your point, if I could save that, I mean, and some owners, it depends on what the strategy is, right? But for guys that are in it for the cash flow, they're going to be in the deal for many years, right? They're not in it to show, look, I got the top dollar lease in my market for the last 5 leases. Therefore, the next guy can hypothetically get that, right? Take that off the table. I mean, to your point, I can not have a unit vacant for a month and have to go release it and save the $2,000, right? I mean, and maybe I don't go up an extra $25 a month of rent, but guess what? 25 times 12, that's $300 a year. I've already saved 4x that on the turns. And so, yeah, it's painful. And this is where I tell people there's a cost to moving in low quality people. The time that the unit sits vacant, and the headache of getting that person out, getting the unit turned. Because the other thing too, and I'm sure you've experienced this, because again, I've experienced it on our own assets, is it's so much work to get a property from 85 to 95, right? But staying at 95 is cruise control, right? Because again, you're psyched because now you have so many more turns, so many more leases, versus, hey, once it's kind of stabilized, you're just renewing, you're moving in a few people, you're cycling a few units. It's less work for everybody. And there's a cost to that too.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So let's talk about that. How do you guys in your organizations, for your own properties and for your third party, what do you guys do to kind of watch the back door, or in other words, to increase retention?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty particular about, they start renewals 3 months in advance, and we grill them it's literally front and center data point. And I even have property level report cards internally that we go through all these key metrics. And every time I think of something, I'm like, hey, that's actually a good data point, and get that added to the report card. But really tracking the stuff 3 months in advance, working the renewals, and then figuring out different incentives, right? And really kind of letting managers know, hey, you have the flexibility to close this person, right? Here's your range to kind of get it done, because there really is a mathematical, min and max that you need to renew that person at. And so they just need to land in there somewhere, right? And everybody's happy. And so you start at the top, and then you kind of just taper down. But to me, though, it's you can't do renewals 30 days out. You already lost that person, man. I mean, people that are quality people are going to already have a plan within 30 days. They're not going to, hey, 20 days. Yeah, I know I'm supposed to move out in 20 days. Yeah, I'll stay. Like, that's not going to happen. So really working it early on, getting the managers to kind of have that range, and incentivize the managers too, right? We pay for renewals, right? I mean, because again, there is a cost to that. And even educating the staff at how much easier their life will be if they get the renewals, right? Yeah. Because again, that means, hey, guess what? That's one less thing for you to turn. Hey, guess what? Maintenance guy, that means that's one less thing for you to turn, right? It's just easier for everybody. And so we put a big focus on it in general, right? In terms of just really working it, and every week going through, hey, what's our renewal and what's the status on each one of these guys?
Okay. So our philosophy is that renewal doesn't start 30 days or 90 days out, right? Renewal is something that is a full year thing. If they had a shitty moving experience, they're not going to renew. It doesn't matter what you do 90 days out, right? If they don't get their maintenance request done on time, they're not going to renew. If the maintenance guy came in once in the entire year but left the apartment dirty with mud on the floor, right, they're going to have really bad taste in their mouth, and it's going to be hard to overcome it. So the way we look at it is like, from the moment they move in, we work on the renewal, right? Yeah. We focus on retention.
You bring up a good point, and that's actually probably something I just kind of glossed over. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's about, in the end of the day, you are providing a service to the tenants. You have to realize that, right? The renewal is the carrot, but again, if they're already pissed off, it's already an uphill battle. And it's funny, you mentioned the move, and I learned that trick from our first asset manager that we had many years ago, right? Whenever he would go on site, he would actually, this is whenever we were still third party, he would ask them for their last 10 move-in condition reports. Because guess what? If a tenant is complaining, like, I got a hole here, this doesn't, their move-in condition shows the quality of the unit. Well, you already started that relationship on a sour footing, right? And so for us, we actually do have a process for basically, after people move in 30, 60, 90 days, we do follow-ups to figure out just what's going on, what's painful, what's not. And then just tracking those work orders and just really being particular about that. Because, you hit it on the head, right? If they're happy, the price is the last thing that kind of really, you got to go home run, but you got to keep them satisfied beforehand.
Okay, awesome. So you kind of started to mention that in the last few minutes about reports and KPIs. So how does it look like for you working with your team? As I'm guessing you still do the management side of things, right? So take off your manager hat off and put your asset manager off for a second. And how does it look like working with your team? How often do you talk to them? What are you looking at? And how do you encourage them or steer
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. So for us, it's a good question. For us, we started our management company with the plan of it being third party. And I treat it as an independent entity, really, in the sense that our asset manager's office is over there, property manager's down this way. And, they are two different people, right? And they still get on the weekly calls. The calls are all recorded. I still listen to them whenever I feel like it. And, expect them to still have that separation. It's not a big blur, and I really don't want it to be a blur because I want this guy picking on this guy if he needs to, and vice versa, right? There needs to be kind of a healthy banter, healthy candor there. And so it's very much the asset manager has the things that he's focused on. What are we getting on renewals? How much did we get on renewals? What did we get on premiums? What are we spending to get these upgrades? Like really, doing asset management level functions. All the property managers focusing on property management things. Are we collecting what we're supposed to? Do we have the processes for anything and everything, right? And really, doing operation level thing. And so they are two separate things. And then, we sync, Ben, and it's funny, me and Ben have divided it up too, right? Where he syncs with the asset manager, it's kind of helping kind of lead that charge while I'm unfortunately stuck on the property management and really helping build that out because that business there's so much process and stuff to build there, right? And so that kind of keeps it separated to some sense too, right? And then me and him could be the continuity of where we got to make everybody happy, keep everybody aligned, kind of thing too. So
gotcha. Okay, so you mentioned you have about 1,000, if the math is out, about 1,000 units you do third party for.
Third party, so I guess one thing I didn't mention is we do not manage our Atlanta portfolio. So that is, we have not taken over Atlanta or anything like that. So we third party about 2,000, and that's, we'll have a few more coming up here in the pipeline. And then of that, 2,000 third party, 1,000 are first party. I guess that's what you call it, right? So
okay. Why?
Why third party?
Why take somebody else's headache, right? I know we got cornered to do our own management, and I took the pain because I had to, right? It's our properties, our investors. I'll do whatever I have to do, but why take other people's headache?
It's a good question because I ask myself that every day almost. I'm like, man, it's a hard business in a lot of ways. But it helps me manage my properties better, right? And what I mean by that is it gives me scale of resources, scale of, back end, and being able to have more reach across the ecosystem, right? I can see more deals. I know what deals are having problems. You see more, you hear more just by the access you have. And so it gives me operational efficiencies, right? In terms of, hey, if we're doing an upgrade, instead of buying, I'm the kind of guy that once we have enough scale in the market, rather than buying, 150 faucets to upgrade 150 units, I'll go buy a container of faucets and do it across, get a couple of other buy-ins from other owners saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy a container. It's going to cost this. We're going to charge this premium for doing this, being very candid, transparent. But ultimately, you're, instead of paying Home Depot 20, you're getting it for 15. Are you happy with that? Yay, nay, let's go do it, kind of thing. So I think it gives us economies of scale. I can go get, to your point, if you're managing 400 units, that's what, 3 properties, maybe 3, 4. I don't know the size, but ultimately you can only get a landscaper to bid 3, 4 properties. Whereas if I have 15 properties in the market, I have a lot more influence, which ultimately results in better management for my own assets, right? Better performance, better pricing for my own assets, as well as third party. So it's almost like it's a necessary evil sometimes, because with scale, it gives you both problems, but other benefits. And so, if a manager leaves, you can shuffle people around a lot more effectively, right? Whereas if you only have 3 properties, the manager leaves, you lost 1/3 of your leadership, right?
Yeah.
Things like that to kind of, think about. Because the other problem too, actually, I'll say this, and I think this is funny, and you'll probably appreciate that. The problem with management, right, is really a good manager quickly becomes a supervisor or regional, right? And a bad manager doesn't stay there very long. And so that role is always a role that's like the good, very rarely do people stay in managers, right? If they're good, they go up. If they're bad, they're gone. And so it's
one little trick that we found is good for a manager position is to find an older supervisor that wants to take a step down.
You hit it right on the head, and we have 2 exact situations of those.
That's the best for a property manager position.
And it's funny because we did that, and then that manager, now we kind of talked her into being a super because she's really, really good. Right. And so now we're like, look, we'll keep it, we will reduce the travel, but like that worked out amazing on one of our properties. And now we have that again. And then there's a question of, well, can you have a person that is a manager, but regional material, they kind of supervise another manager, right? To where they're almost like a remote supervisor, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
a multi-site.
I'm trying to figure those dynamics out. But to your point, that is the best one, right? The one that, they don't need to make as much money. They just want stability, simplicity.
Yeah.
And yeah.
They want to take down the travel. They just want to.
No, we had one that just whipped the property like night and day in 60 days. Amazing what was done on that property. So like just cleaned it. So yeah,
send her our way.
So I'll trade you one. All right. No, that's funny that you said that because that was in the back of my head last week. I'm like, this is the best kind of supervisor or manager. So
yeah, no, and again, it's kind of like a weird situation in our business, right? We buy $5, $10, $15 million properties, and we end up putting a $40,000 or $50,000 pay grade to run the show.
Yeah.
But the finances can't afford having a $100,000
person making 50, 60, 70, $100,000 decisions each month.
Yes.
Like and one, it's crazy to me. And this is,
but that's just across the industry. That's the standard, right? I haven't seen a lot of properties where you have $100,000 managers on them. Definitely not in Texas. No. That's the kind of things are, again, more of the challenges of the industry. So let's switch to some of the questions that we ask all of our guests, right? So you guys do a lot of value add, right? From the eyes of an operator, and you have both the manager and the asset manager and the property manager perspective. We're going to look at income and we're going to look at expense separately. So let's focus on income for a second. What are your go-to methods to increase income that is not increasing rents and applying RUBS, right? Everybody does that. Mm-hmm. Give us a few creative ways where you guys found you can add value and charge more.
Yeah, no. So there's some things that people like one property, we got this idea from a property we bought and took over. Like simple things like a tech package, man. You spend $150, $200 and some people will pay $50 a month for that. That is a very, very good ROI, right?
What is that? What's in the package?
Oh, you're putting in like a Nest thermostat. You're putting in August door front lock. And what's the third thing I'm missing? Oh, like USB outlets, like very simple things to do. It takes a maintenance guy 45 minutes, an hour all in. It's really the equipment, but then people will pay you that premium. And I've seen that, right? Other things, that are easy are carports, right? Like really being smart and really, we like to do 3 tiers of parking, right? Kind of having, I forget the terms that we use, but essentially there's covered, there's premium and there's standard, right? So premium is that spot that everybody always wants. It's right next to their apartment. It's, I can see it from their balcony, whatever, right? People will pay for that spot, right? Even if it's nominal, right? I think what we are good at is actually really pushing the other income piece, right? And, you hit the easiest ones are the RUBS. Like that one is just easy, right? But then really digging in, and I like to really look at what else can I do from what CapEx can I put in? What can I get out of it, right? There's other nominal fees that you do see here and there, right? Like valet trash, right? I'm starting to see more of that even on the BEC properties. Right. And I think it's as an operator, it's valuable because, the thing I hate the most is going to properties and people put their trash all over the dumpster. It's just, and then the dumpster company, they do their own, you have to really be anal with them because those guys will just throw whatever and they'll charge you premiums because, we did an extra load. And I think there's actually, as an operator, there's a way to structure that to where it's a win-win, right? You get a much better, cleaner property. You're maybe making a few bucks on it as well. And then for a tenant, hey, it's a much more simple process, right? That's another one we're looking at a lot more closely. Even simple things, man, just rebidding the contracts, right? Like we literally did that big push this past couple of months. And, even the trash contract, we got it 17% lowered just by spending the, 3 hours to do it. Or the laundry contract that they say they're paying you. And then you go and you realize there's a big lawsuit against the company. And then once you kind of send them a demand letter, all of a sudden they send you 15 checks for what you owed, right? Things like that people don't track. And all this stuff starts to add up. I'm trying to think of other big NOI boosts that I've seen. I mean, the tech one is the one I like the most lately, right? Where it's very cheap and very quick bang for the buck.
And
Yeah.
you see
Any other
that,
big ones that you like? I'm going to ask you the same question that I'm missing here.
well, listen to our podcast and you'll find a lot of those.
Right now.
Yeah, no, it's uh, what we've seen is that a lot of the time people just split the rents based on layouts, right? This is a 2-bedroom, this is a 1-bedroom, this is 3-bedroom, this is the price for 1, 2, and 3. But there are not only tiers, but there's like first floor, second floor.
Yes.
Does it have a patio? Doesn't have a patio? Does it have washer dryer connections? No washer dryer connections, right? All those little things allows you to set different prices for different units, and again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. A third party doesn't take the time to do all these
No, they
things
don't.
because it takes time and they don't see the ROI with the way the compensation is structured. But for us, doing something like this can really help us push the rents. And again, it's not like because it's first floor, it's $500 more than the second floor, but it could be as simple as $10, $20.
It absolutely adds up. No,
And
I
they
mean,
all add up.
we do the exact same thing. I mean, the first floor, I mean, you hit the key one. I'm trying to think of the different, we even have like ones that are like 1-1s with like a study that are really like 2-1s and not, I mean, and I don't know how you guys do it, if you do it as a floor plan or you do it as a like an amenity on the unit, right? For us, we've kind of played with both because as an owner, I like to see what am I getting in upgrades for them, right? So seeing it as a separate floor plan is a lot easier than seeing, okay, our ones have these different checks, but then each one is a little different. You have to drill in.
Well,
So
we have a combination of.
Yeah, I've struggled with what the best way to do that is, but I mean, to your point, that's low hanging fruit, right? Doing those kinds of things. And even other, I mean, I guess it's thought of another one, just I like properties where I can figure out a way to add a bedroom, right? Like the convergence, like those are the best. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. Like we have one where it's literally these 1-bedrooms with a study and literally I add a freaking thing. I put a corner closet and boom now, and it's actually already got a window. So it's really a real bed. Yeah. Now I've gotten that, premium for getting a 2, but really it was a 1 to start with. One other one I do like, and it only works on certain properties. We've done this a few times now is getting, properties all have balconies, but finding balconies where you actually can get the enclosure, right, and give them essentially a little bit of a yard, right? People pay up for that. We got $125 premiums for that. So,
yeah, and the way I like to look at where do I spend the money is by looking at the researchers that tell me what are people looking for. So up until last year, the number 1 searched item was pet friendly. So if you go on any of our property website and you look at amenities for the community, pet friendly is the top 1. Why? Because that's what everybody care about. Well, having a little yard is super important for people that have pets, right? Because you can let the dog out or the cat out without being afraid that, they'll just run away or get hurt somehow. So, so again, I tell the girls in the office, when you post for this property that have or for this unit that have the balcony, make sure you talk about pet friendly. Make sure you talk about the fact that it has a private backyard. So it comes down to all the little things across the board.
And you made me think of a really good one actually that we do. It's also auditing who's really paying the pet fee and who's not, right? That one is an easy revenue source, right? Where like
everything. It's not just auditing
everything, but the pet one is easy where we do quarterly inspections. As part of that, you make a note if there's a pet. And guess what? Someone that already has a pet, you hit them with a pet fee, they're more likely to pay the pet fee than get rid of the pet. So, I mean,
there's always the conversation like, I don't have a pet. Well, here's a picture.
Yeah, no.
Right? Because I walk the property, I take pictures, right? And you always find a cat or a dog in the window, kind of with the face smushed. So we also have, of course, quarterly pest control. So when the pest control guy comes in, there's always one of our guys walking with him to open the doors, right? We don't send a vendor to the units without one of our team members. So we give our team member a sheet to check the boxes. Who has pets? Who's neglecting the unit? Who has any major issue that we don't know of? Because unfortunately, what we learned is that some residents will take a lot of pain and not talk and will not complain. And even when you ask them, they will not tell you. So we had a slab leak in one of our properties, and we sent messages, text messages and emails because we couldn't find the leak outside. So we knew it's under one of the units. And we asked anybody, if you have a leak, let us know. And nobody said anything. And then eventually we found it in one of the units. They literally lived with a warm water soaked carpet and said nothing for over a week. It's kind of like, are you kidding me? So, we encourage our residents to tell us. We always do follow-ups on all of the work orders to make sure they were done. We have quarterly surveys. We talk to every resident once a quarter to get the feedback, the general feedback about the property. And then we send our guy with the pest control guy to check the boxes, right? If the smoke alarm is chirping, if there's a pet in the unit and all that. But especially if you are an operator that works with a third-party property management, audit everything. That $25,000 a year I mentioned was a fee that was not charged, even though it was in the lease. It was just not put into the system. And without doing your ledger audits every month to make sure that everybody got charged everything, then you won't be able to get that.
Yeah.
And we're talking tens of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, and it's funny because like on the buy side, you do see the discrepancies. Like some deals you see and you're like, man, these guys are minting other income. Whereas like other properties you see, you're like, this is a very similar property and there's a $300,000 discrepancy. And so pennies adds up into real money. And I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. So let's flip the conversation to the expense side, right? What do you guys do in order to reduce expenses in your portfolios?
So the biggest thing I like to tell people is you can spend, I'm making up numbers, 40 hours on expense control and you can spend 40 hours on income control. And 9 times out of 10, income is easier to get your pop than the expense side, right? That's the biggest thing we do on the expense side that I think makes a huge difference, because we've been burned by this with managing companies, is requiring, and I have this weekly, and it's in our report, requiring POs to get made independent of the invoices coming in, right? Because you don't want managers just reacting, oh, I got an invoice, I'm going to go create the PO, right? It doesn't make sense. But really forcing that. And then the other piece tied to that is really forcing our maintenance. Whenever someone leaves a unit, they have to go in and basically take a photo audit of the whole thing, right? Then they have to go put in their POs of what they want to do. A back office person gets to see, okay, here's what we also tie that to what did we charge on security deposits, right? Because it's easier for someone to just give back security deposit than actually try to fight for it, right? We have a separate team that actually audits the security deposits tied to the photos and the condition of the unit, right? But more importantly, though, the maintenance guy puts together the PO. I want to buy new flooring. I want to do a new microwave, and I want to paint the walls. Back office sees it and says that flooring does not need to be replaced. Like, it looks fine, right? Like, okay, maybe you replace one piece, but you don't need to spend $2,000 to replace the whole thing, right? So that's one immediate way to save it. And then also, whenever the unit's ready, they have to go do the same photo audit. So you have before and after of every single unit, and you have POs, and you know what should have been spent on it. And even on the after, you can see, did the microwave get installed or did it get stolen, right?
Yeah.
And then that's its own set of problems. So really, it's what you said earlier, right? Really tapering down the backdoor problem, right? Not just from a renewal, but even whenever you do have to go do the turn, really controlling that story, right? That's one thing. Another one that we do is actually just across looking at T12s, have a separate report where we're looking at just variances, right? And just seeing, are we seeing an uptick in water or utilities? Like we see that, literally have that situation right now where we're seeing an increase month to month, which doesn't really tie to occupancy. It's been the same occupancy. So there's something else going on there. And so just being aware of those, because I mean, utilities is where you really can get killed as well. Like that's a big area that actually is worth focusing on the expense side of things.
Yeah.
So maybe those are some of the biggest ones that kind of come to mind that I like, or maybe the most exciting ones. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the water, and one thing that we like to do is we track the meters every week. Because if you're waiting to see the uptick in your water bill, you're about a month and a half too late, right? So if we start seeing an uptick in one of the water meters, then we know we have a slab leak or we have a leak somewhere, and we go and we hunt it down so we can shut it down as soon as possible. So worst case, we have a week and a half loss of water versus a month and a half loss of water.
Yep.
Not to mention all the damage that leaky water can create.
Digital water meters with internet access are worth their weight in gold. They're pennies, and I log into them because there's one property where we have a serious water leak somewhere, and it's killing us. Like it's it's a thing that we knew the property had it whenever we bought it, because we have two properties not far from each other. Mm-hmm. One's got 50 more units, but it's got almost 2.5x the water bill. Like it's just literally the per unit on that is like $150 a unit of water. And we've gotten water leak detection companies and all sorts of stuff. But it's been fun because I log into that thing like every 2 days. I just think about it. I'm like, let me go see what it's. And it's been nice to see the trend down because we're fixing random leaks. Just any and every leak that we can find. Mm-hmm. But there's still something bigger somewhere happening. That's a separate problem. But yeah, I mean, those things are cheap and absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Well, we can talk after the show. I've had so many plumbing lessons learned in the last year and a half. I'll be happy to share with you.
Please do.
Awesome. So kind of be conscious of your time. Again, a question we ask all of our guests on the show. If you could go back 10, 15 years ago to the software engineer for us and say, hey, I got a really good tip for you, right? And the obvious one, 2009 is the bottom, buy everything. That's off the table. So if you can't say that, what do you give younger you as advice?
No, I would say it's more of a general thing. I don't want to tie it to real estate, but it's really be leery of building your brand and your CRM, right, throughout your life, right? You in the syndicator side, you start to build your database once you kind of want to go into that. But sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had done this 10 years more in my life, especially me. I mean, I was exposed to so many tech people, so much in that space. And I wish I had been better at building that brand, continuing to build that database throughout my life, right? So that's maybe the easiest one, right? I mean, there's a million other things that you could say, this stock, that stock. But I mean, a real life tip is that one, I think, no better time than today. That's something someone can start today, right? I don't need to know when the next Google is. This is a totally different thing, right?
No, that's a great tip. That's a really great tip. Building your brand and start building your potential investor database.
Right? And I like to say it's your audience of whatever you do. Right. Whether it could be investors, it could be customers, right? If I decide to go sell cupcakes, I have a database I go sell cupcakes to, whatever, right? So
absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can our listeners find you? If they want to reach out, they want to invest with you, or they want to hire you as a third-party manager, where can they find you? And we'll put all the links in the show notes.
No, please, disruptequity.com or send me an email at Feras, Feras at disruptequity.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I think you brought a lot of value.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for you, the listener, if you want to listen more to our episodes, go to iTunes, Stitchers, SoundCloud, whatever you take your podcast, and subscribe and leave us a feedback. That is really important for us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon again.
Thank you for listening to our show. If you want to enjoy more episodes, please subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. For questions or feedback, please visit our site at www.aptopr.com.